massage this.
One world currency.
The New World Order.
Those are the roots of trouble.
I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice, tumbling down the rabbit hole. Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. But I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people.
And now, welcome to another episode of Down the Rabbit Hole. Here's your host from federaljack.com. It's Popeye.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another live edition of DTRH. It is October 8th, 2015. And I am excited. I am really excited tonight. I have a guest that I've actually been meaning to get on for a while. And I should have had her on probably at least 6 months ago. But as you all know, the past year has been very hectic, and I'm just getting everything pretty much back in order and trying to get my bearings again and get the show rolling at full speed. So I'm doing what I can to make up for that. Anyway, who can I be talking about? Well, I consider her to be, I don't want to say controversial, but she's, I guess you could say that, because she speaks her mind, but she also, when she writes an article, she does a radio show when she talks about something. At least I find, not only is she entertaining, she makes me chuckle constantly, but a lot of sarcastic humor. You have to be able to understand sarcasm, ladies and gentlemen. By the way, sarcasm is a sign of high intelligence. But when she writes an article, I find anyway that there's no opinion. There's no personal opinion in there. It's based off of what she can find, what she can dig up, which is actually what journalism is. Otherwise, your article goes from being an article to an opinion piece. Anyway, I digress. Who could I be talking about? Well, if you don't know, you should go tune into her radio show. I'm going to let her plug that. But check out Occupy Corporatism. And I'm about to introduce my guest tonight. I'm excited, ladies and gentlemen. The one, the only, Susanne Posel. Suzanne, welcome to the broadcast here.
Wow, thank you. You know, I've been wanting to come on your show for a long time, too, so thank you.
I'm really excited. I told you we got a chance to chat before we came on air together, and I'm really excited to talk to you. You know, a lot of times people, at least from what I see, get into this whole thing doing radio or, you know, writing articles and putting up a website and becoming an author to get in. They get into it to make a buck or to make a name for themselves. And over the years, I've watched how you write, and I really, like I said, I really do respect the way you write. There isn't a lot of emotion involved in there. It's, I mean, you might, if you decide to put in your emotion, you actually even, you usually make note of it. And most of your stuff, if not all of it, is none of it's opinion pieces. I can put it that way. Like I said, there's a difference between someone writing and I think this happened or I think that happened. That's not how you do it. And I respect that because there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation, what I like to call shinfo, which I'm pretty sure you could figure out means shitty information. So there's a lot of shinfo floating out there. And I just appreciate your writing style. So I'm super excited to have you on. If you want, take a few minutes. I want you to introduce yourself to my listeners. Tell them about Occupy Corporatism. Tell them about your Facebook and your Twitter and stuff. And I know you do a radio show over on AFR. I just don't know what the times are and the dates. So I want you to throw out whenever you're on, and plug all your stuff and just take a couple minutes and let the listeners get a chance to know you. And then I'll pick your brain.
Okay. I am Susanne Posel, the chief editor of OccupyCorporatism.com, which is a headline news website. I only write about facts. I only write about things that are provable, that are evidenced, because I think that at the end of the day, we can spin suppositions all we want, but that's really reserved for after dinner, sitting on your back porch with a Bud Light, talking about what could be or, what you think might be happening. But what actually is happening is important because what's actually happening, who did it, why they did it, where they did it, if they have the means to do it again, means we can stop them from doing it if we know who it is and what they did in detail. And because of the information age, we have access to a lot of credible information to stop the people who are doing things that we don't particularly appreciate or agree with. So my website is hearkening back to what journalism was, what it intended to be, and away from the opinion op-ed journalism that is going on now, so that we have facts and evidence so we can go after the right people and stop these things from happening. My radio show, which is Hardline on American Freedom Radio, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 8 p.m. Central. That is more of, it's a news show. I do have guests on from time to time, but I wanted, again, people to have a place where they could go and get the news. There's a lot of talk radio, and there's a lot of shows where they have guests and people come on and talk about stuff, and I wanted at least one place for you to go to in the evening, just like you would go to your mainstream and turn on the television and watch the news. You can tune into Hardline and get the news for the day. Also, I do some bits that I have reoccurring, like Police State Wrap-Up, where I gather up a week's worth. And believe me, there's too much information with the Police State Wrap-Up. I get overwhelmed because there's so much going on with this. But really what I want us with that bit is to understand is that the exposure that we have to it today is simply because of the information age. It's not that this stuff wasn't happening before. It's that 30 years ago, we didn't have smartphones, we didn't have computers, we didn't have the communicative ability that we have now, and the instantaneous ability to communicate. I mean, an instance can happen, and if you're hooked up to live stream on Ustream or Justin TV or one of these outlets, you can live stream, and I know some people at Film the Police and Cop Block do this, where they are not just filming the incident and recording, but they're actually live streaming it, and you can watch it in real time. All of this is extremely important, again, which goes back to the ethics of my journalism, which is evidence, facts and evidence. If you have evidence of wrongdoing, then you can make the wrongdoing stop. And so that's my mission in alternative media. Or, I hate to lump myself into alternative media because it's an industry and it's so controlled and so convoluted. But if I were to be lumped into it, then that's my mission, to bring back actual journalism.
You have Twitter and Facebook and all that stuff that people can follow you on?
Yes, Facebook, Real Susanne Posel. I had a profile for many years, and then Facebook decided that they weren't sure if I was me. So they wanted me to give over my birth certificate, my marriage license, a copy of my driver's license, and a photo ID, a bank statement, something with my current address, like a bill. And so I refused, and I started a new Facebook page. So I apologize. I had so many people who had friended me and who were following me on that. And it really tore my heart up because when I started the new one, there were thousands and thousands of people. I couldn't remember all of your names to contact you to say, hey, this is my new one. And there was this rumor that got started, and I don't know where it originated, that the new profile that I started was actually the NSA. And so I got a lot of comments from people and messages like, hey, why did you block me, or why did you unfriend me? And when I explained it to them immediately, we reconnected. But I got a lot of messages as well asking me if it was really me, and actually questioning me based on things that they had heard me say on interviews. Like I had to prove myself, like the security question that you have on when you forget your password. It was hilarious. But yes, I also have a Twitter, Ocu Corporatism, and Google Plus. I have an account on World Truth as well, if you want to catch me there. You can email me at occupycorporatism@gmail.com. I can't get to all of your emails. I apologize. But please message me, and please email me. And a lot of the stuff that I bring up on my show comes from my audience. So I may not directly talk to you, but I might bring it up on the show if I think it's that important. So that's it.
Awesome. I'm glad. And I really want people to check her work out. Follow her on Twitter, follow her on Facebook. You don't always have to agree with everything someone says, by the way, either. A lot of people are like, well, I don't wholeheartedly agree with everything this person or that person says or writes. I don't think any of my listeners agree with me 100%. I would certainly hope not. I would hope that you would be maybe challenged by something I say and go try to prove me wrong. Usually, if you do the research yourself, you'll come across it and you'll see. I can only show, like Morpheus said to Neo, I can only show you the door. You have to be the one that steps through it. So you have to be the one that takes the information and runs with it. I can only tell you that, hey, such and such a thing happened, or Suzanne could tell you such and such a thing happened. But if you don't go do the research yourself, it's not really going to take effect, and it's not going to seep into your brain. And I always tell you, ladies and gentlemen, if someone tells you that they have all the information and that you don't need to go anywhere else, red flag. Big red flag. They should encourage you to always go do the research yourself and not agree with everything they say. I don't expect you to agree with everything I say. So anyway, Suzanne, I want to get into it because there's so much to talk about with you. For real. I want to pick your brain on about 10,000 different subjects. First and foremost, you just wrote a really interesting article about mandatory minimums. And this is something that I have an issue with. The whole prison industrial complex is something I have an issue with, but I live in Florida, and Florida is a state where it's the 3 strikes and you're out. So it doesn't matter what. You can spend the rest of your life in jail for something really stupid and mundane, which there are a lot of people that are doing that. And it's a burden on, first of all, even if you don't care about the human people that are in there, the human cattle as they're looked at that are in these prisons, the slaves, because that's what it is. It's legalized slavery, and we can get into all that, but even if you don't look at it like that, the economics, how much money is wasted keeping somebody in jail for life because they smoked a joint or they had a bag of weed on them or something really stupid like that. And I was hoping that there would be eventually, people more and more because you can only talk about it so much as one individual. I was hoping more and more people over the course of time would actually see the prison industrial complex for what it is. And actually, your article kind of, it brought that back into my purview again, and I was quite surprised. So I want to get into the mandatory minimums. Are they gonna start to get rid of these things? Are they going to start to abolish these statewide or on a national level? What's going on?
They're talking about federal prisons, which is what the government can control. So the federal prisons, they're releasing about 6,000 right now. These are low-level, nonviolent offenders. So the big deal with the Republicans and the right wing is that, oh my God, you're letting all these, criminals out onto the street. These are people who, like you said, for the most part, they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. They had a minimal amount of drugs, even narcotics. You have to remember that when Reagan did his little dance with the, say no to drugs, he likened a kilo of cocaine to a gram of crack. Now, the reason why they did that is because white people were snorting cocaine and black people were smoking crack because they couldn't afford the cocaine. So if you had a gram of cocaine in the 80s, and even still to this day, you would be charged as if you had a kilo of cocaine. That's a huge difference. You have people who had basically a 20 bag worth of heroin doing life right now. And by the way, to answer your question about how much it costs, $30,000 a year per prisoner. And we have 1.2 million or 2.1 million prisoners right now. So you do the math.
And that's
$30,000 a year.
That's just in the federal prisons, right?
Yes. And that also includes the private corporation prisons. So this is what it costs taxpayers. $30,000 a year. Most of us don't make that much to support our family, and yet we're spending this much, and we're not really getting much. I mean, Whole Foods is getting some goat cheese and things like that from the prisoners. Of course, now they're not buying those products. What douchebags, by the way, for them to do that. But on top of it, we have a system where it's based on recidivism. So you want these people to come back. It's a private prison complex. And so you're going to make money. You're going to be able to, keep people employed if you keep people coming through the revolving door. But then you have situations like, I don't know if you caught this in the news, but there was a debate that happened between the Eastern New York Correctional Facility debate team and Harvard debate team. And guess who won that debate?
Harvard?
No. The prisoners did. Now, let me explain. The prisoners had no access to the internet, so they had to do it old school with the Dewey Decimal System, okay? And on top of that, they once they get what they the name of the books or the magazines or the articles that they want, then they have to submit that to the faculty or to the management at the prison to get permission, and that takes about 2 to 3 weeks. So in order to prepare for this debate, it took them a long time. I mean, Harvard students have access to the internet with their phones. So these prisoners won this debate. And the interesting part about this is when you dig deeper into why they won, they were part of the Barred Prison Initiative. And what this is giving the prisoners an actual college degree, getting them into teaching them skills that they will actually need once they leave, educating them so that they have an option to say no to the lifestyle that they're going back to, and yes to higher paying jobs or a job at all. And even though there is the hump of getting over the stigma of being an ex-con and applying, on a Vice documentary that was done when President Obama went to one of the prisons, he mentioned that they're trying to get some sort of mandate so that employers will not be able to ask if you've ever been convicted of a crime or a felony and explain it. And the reason why they're doing that is because of the stigma. Because the majority of who is sitting in prison right now are low-level nonviolent offenders, even in federal prison. So when we see that somebody's been arrested or and basically, I can be honest, out of all the men that I've ever met in my life, and I'm a well-educated person, I lived in very affluent areas growing up. I have only met one male, that has never been to prison or jail or arrested. And that's my son. And I've met some wonderful men, some jerks, but some wonderful men. The point to that is getting arrested is just like a thing that happens now. And so we still have this stigma from the 50s and 60s when you were arrested for something really bad. The cops came and you were arrested or convicted or sent to prison for something egregious. Now you're pulled over for whatever reason the cop decides, and then they beat the shit out of you, and maybe they kill you. And if they don't, they give you a rough ride, and that kills you. And if not, then you end up in the prison, in the jail, and then you magically hang yourself. Or if you're lucky, you get to spend the rest of your life in an actual prison. It didn't used to be like this. So getting rid of that stigma, I think, is a good thing. It will help. And if employers can't get into your past that way to find out who you are before the interview process. I think that if they meet with people and see where they are and actually sit down and have a conversation with them and then find out that they were arrested or convicted of something and what it was, it'll give the ex-con an opportunity to prove themselves. So getting back to the barred prison system initiative, it's amazing, it's wonderful, and the winning of this debate proves that prisons were meant to be rehabilitation. You know, like you were saying in the intro, you may not care about these people, but it doesn't matter. They're people. You know, somebody might not care about you. The point is, we're all in this together and we all live together. And some people go to jail for reasons that are absolutely egregious, and some people go to jail because they deserve it. But people who don't go to jail because they deserve it or are given a sentence that fits the crime would want to and are encouraged to, and when they are, they perform to the expectations of wanting to be educated and be a productive member of society. So it behooves us as a society to continue to browbeat these people. We should be lifting them up, getting them education, and helping them become productive members. Because otherwise we're sadistic and misogynistic. We want the violence and then we want to complain that the violence continues.
Yeah, I've had this conversation with people about prisons and the whole prison industrial complex system, and they're like, well, we need to put them somewhere. And I'm like, but now housing prisoners and quote-unquote putting people in jail, treating them like human cattle, almost like a commodity, is now a money-making, massive money-making business in this country, to the point where, I mean, out of the entire population of the planet, not just the country, the entire planet, we have 25% of the world's prison population in the United States. That's insane. We have more people locked up per capita than China.
Yes, and we should not have more people locked up than China.
That's
have
insane.
More people.
That's insane, yeah. Suzanne. I mean, like, what?
Yeah.
The land of the free. Wait, not okay. Hold on. Scratch that. The land of the not so free.
Well, as long as you don't leave your house. Well, then again, they bust in your door. There was a gentleman that I talked about on my last show. He woke up to the police, busting down his door. They shot him twice. He lost a kidney, and they charged him with cocaine trafficking, and he didn't have any cocaine.
Par for the course, dude. For real. Par for the course. I mean, how many times have you seen the videos now? I remember back in the day when I first started posting the videos on YouTube years ago, and I started doing like police state videos. And I even have a lot of these things I have a downloadable archive section on Federal Jack. And in there's a police state section, and a lot of these videos are in there. And there's just video after video of cops planting cannabis or whatever on people. I mean, getting caught by their own dash cams doing it. They just don't care. It's commonplace because they have to have a certain amount of arrests. You have to think about it. Like, you can't look at it and go, well, the cops are getting paid, and they're doing a good deed. They're keeping the scum of the earth. Look at all these criminals. There's mass amounts of them. No, they're making everybody a criminal because they need to keep arresting people. They need to keep locking people up because eventually people get out, and not everybody's going to end up back in jail because maybe they were locked up for some completely retarded thing like life in prison for smoking a joint or something equally as stupid. And I keep bringing that up because there are cases like that where there are people rotting away in jail because they smoked a joint 30 years ago or 20 years ago, and some, under some draconian, judge, they were locked away, and the judge actually probably agreed with that and actually really believed it to a certain extent, because there are those people. Then, of course, there's the judges like they caught not too long ago, Suzanne, where they were sending kids to these boot camps, and they were getting like $5,000 a pop because the state was paying the boot camp, and then the boot camp would kick back like $5,000 a kid to the judge for every time they sent a kid into this, the boot camp program, because they were getting like, I think, $25,000 or $20,000 per child from the state, and then they'd kick back a little bit to the judge, and the judges were just sending the, one after another after another. It becomes about making money. That's the problem. They're not trying to rehabilitate anybody. I know someone in the prison industrial complex, like in the system, not that works for it. I know someone who, a good friend of mine who I used to be stationed with in the Coast Guard, and their child got arrested for something completely stupid. It was really dumb, and they had a public defender who was about as useful as tits on a bull. And long story short, this kid now has a record, a felony for literally not doing anything, just because that they were in a vehicle at the same time as this other person. That really all they did was something dumb, but they got charged with a much higher crime. And I mean, these kids, they're young kids, and now for the rest of their lives, they have to walk around with like the scarlet letter on them. They can't. It's a pain in the ass for them to get jobs. It's a pain in the ass for them, and they're trying. And the system is, Suzanne, it's just not set up in their favor. I was talking to him a couple weeks ago about this, and you know, it's just, and I said the same thing. It's not set up in their favor. It's set up for these kids. You know, they know they're going to get a lot of the younger generation there too, and they know when they get out, like you said, recidivism. They need them to go and offend again, so they can get it back in the system and get another $20,000 or $30,000 over the course of time, depending on, you know, how long they're in the system and how long. And people think that that's free and that the state just pays it. No, the state charges the prisoner too. So then the person has to pay a lot of that stuff back. It's such a scam on so many levels. It's ridiculous. I'm going to pause this though, because I see the break is sneaking up on us. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you check out Suzanne's work. Occupy Corporatism is an awesome website. I go check it out. And like I said, I actually listen to her shows when I'm working around the house and stuff. And her sarcasm makes me chuckle, to say the least. So stay tuned. We will be right back. We are back, ladies and gentlemen, hanging out with Susanne Posel, Occupy Corporatism. You got to check her website out. You got to check her work out. As I said, I find Suzanne, I love your sarcastic wit. It like a lot of the stuff that we look at and we deal with is pretty doomy and gloomy a lot of times. And it takes a little bit of humor and a little bit of sarcasm sometimes to be able to swallow some of these bitter pills. So keep doing that. The sarcasm is really needed. And the people that don't get it, well, what can I tell you? Sometimes you just don't get it. Anyway, so we were discussing the prison industrial complex and, you know, police brutality and all these ongoing issues. And I wanted to get your take really quick just on what we were talking about when we went to break. And then I wanted to get into what we were talking about actually during the break. But when we were going to break, I had said that, you know, the system's really not set up. And that I agreed with your set, you know, what you were talking about with recidivism and them wanting to get these people to go ahead and commit crimes again to get them back in the system. And I just wanted to, you know, get your response to, you know, that there could be a way to fix this stuff, but there currently isn't any. There's really isn't anything positive out there, and there's a reason for it. It's not just because oops, we don't know how to. It's because oops, we really don't care because we need you back in our system.
Well, exactly. That's why the Barred Prison Initiative is so important. They have a 2% recidivism rate. 2%. Right now, it's 68%. And if you take out for some anomalies in statistical data, you go down to 50%. So right now, there's a 50% recidivism rate in the country. That's unacceptable. If we're actually trying to make our country better, or our society better at least, education is the key. Obviously, because the Barred Prison Initiative works. It gives them an actual degree from Bard College. It's not just, you know, some online, you know, Phoenix University of Arizona, whatever. It is a real degree that they can use, and it gives them skills that they need in order to compete in current job markets. So why wouldn't you give someone an opportunity to do something and earn a living and be a productive member of society when they've obviously chosen something else, and that's something that we don't agree with? Give them another opportunity. This gives them that opportunity. Plus, it's a 2% recidivism rate. I can't stress enough that if you want 50% to 2%, come on. We're ridiculously stupid to think that by beating someone down over and over again is going to finally make them see the light and become a productive member of society. No, it's going to cause them to become more angry and more resentful of any authority at all, even if they know deep down inside that what is being told to them is true. They're just going to rebel against it because you've broken the man, you've broken the woman, you've broken their spirit. Well, who are we as a society to break people on a regular basis and then point our finger at them and say, look, they're doing exactly what we said they would because we created them to do that. And it's not right for us to do that to each other. So the Bard Prison Initiative, in my opinion, is one example, and I hope that there are more out there. I haven't done as much research as I should to speak about that, but this is the kind of program that we need. And if we're going to be spending all of this money in taking care of these prisoners, then we should at least shift some of that money away from the private corporations and into education initiatives to make sure that these people can be part of our society. We also have to remember a lot of them are parents, and their children are growing up without their fathers or without their mothers. And that really does take a toll. And if the child ended up in a bad situation and ended up in CPS and foster care, that's terrible in its own. And that's a whole other monster that we have to deal with. But now we have a bunch of parents who can't be there for their kids. And when you lock someone up and you only give them a couple of times a month to see their loved ones, and they're locked away for the rest of the time, don't think that they are not human just like you. They miss their family. They see their children growing up. They call home and the best they can do is talk for 15 minutes and then they're hung up on whether the conversation's ended or not. There's a human aspect to this that Reagan did not think about and Clinton did not think about when they were putting together these laws and putting across the board punishments that did not fit the crime. So I'm glad that we're amending this situation now. I'm glad that there is legislation being promoted in the Senate. Senator Cory Booker and Tim Scott and several others are introduced the Sentencing Reform and Corrections Act of 2015, which will start to undo some of the damage that was done over the last 30 years. And just to be fair, a couple of weeks ago, Bill Clinton was speaking at a conference, and he actually I thought this was very big of him. He said that he was wrong when he implemented the 3 strikes and you're out, that he contributed to the military, to the prison industrial complex that we have today, and the unfair disadvantages that have been created for minority communities all across the country. And he admitted that he had a stake in that and that he is sorry for what he did. Now, I'm just letting you know that because it's a step in the right direction. I mean, as long as we're here on this planet, we have the ability to do something and to change things. Once we're dead, it's over and you can't do anything else. So while we're here, I'm glad that Bill Clinton apologized for what he did. And I'm glad that senators on Capitol Hill recognize the damage that it's done, not only to the prisoners themselves, but the families. You know, the children that grow up with their families in prison or their family member in prison end up in prison themselves. Sons need their fathers. They absolutely do. I know this because I have a son and he has his father and we're married and he's lucky, but lots of kids aren't. But they need their father. And when they know that their father's in jail and they can't do anything about it and they just have to wait and their whole life is going to go on without their father, it does something to a person. You know, it's the same argument as when we bomb the hell out of a Middle Eastern country and then 30 years later, ISIS shows up. Well, duh, because we went over there and killed their grandparents and killed their parents and killed their cousins and they grew up and they realized who killed their family members. Well, here in the United States, we have whole entire generations now that have grown up in the system and they're in the system and their children are looking at them and they're wondering, oh my God, are we going to have a third generation of people who are completely locked up?
And a lot of people would say, well, you know, these people have to be put somewhere. They're a menace to society. A lot of people are locked up for nothing, for nonviolent crimes. I mean, if someone should be locked up, okay, if someone's going to be put in prison, maybe it should be for like violent offenses, right? Maybe caving someone's skull in with a bat. Okay, I can understand that. But locking somebody up for smoking a joint or tripping on mushrooms or even drinking too much, well, they're a repeat offender, Popeye. They DUI. Okay, well, maybe we should address the behavior. Maybe we shouldn't just throw them in a cage. Maybe we should actually try to address the problem and come up with a solution. I'll bet you that would probably be more efficient. Oh, see, that's the problem right there, Suzanne. Efficiency. You can't have efficiency because that doesn't equate to tons of money. And you mentioned these private prisons. A lot of these prisons throughout the country are privatized now. Not many people realize this. And they have agreements with the states, like contracts, where they have an insane clause where they have to have, in some cases, like 90, we'll say between, and it could be even higher, but we'll say between like 85 and 90% capacity. Why do you think they come up with new laws every year? To put you in jail. Because they have to keep the jails filled. They have to make the money. It's absolutely disgusting. But people don't realize this. And I have conversations with people that are, well, what are we going to do with the criminals, dude? What do you do if someone's bad? Well, how about we address the situation on a case-by-case basis? How about that? How about we don't put people in jail for 30 or 40 years either? Because when you put people for lower offenses in jail with people that are in jail for like murder and things like that, they learn how to be more efficient criminals. They've already figured that out as well. Just saying. But hey, that's looking at this whole prison industrial complex thing with a hat of logic and not a hat on of I want to make a ton of money off of
exactly.
slavery.
Because what happens is if you have recidivism, then the money stays within the complex. But if you educate the prisoner and he goes on with his degree and gets a job, well, then the money goes out. It goes out into the community. It might even go out into the world, depending on where he works or she works and what they end up doing with their lives. So you don't control where that money goes. That money goes out and it's gone. The way to keep the money in the flow of the circle is to keep the recidivism rate high, which is why it's 50%. And like you said, why we have these stupid nanny state laws that make it okay for them to arrest you just to get you into the system. And you mentioned that they have to pay back after they leave. Yes, they do. In some cases, tens of thousands of dollars. And if they don't pay, guess what? They get arrested and sent back. And guess what? The fees begin again. They have a new set of fees that they have to pay. This is a cycle that they cannot win because when they come out, there is a stigma against them. They are uneducated. They go back to the area where they got in trouble in the first place and not much has changed. And they have a family to support. And so someone makes a call, they go over and have a drink and have a talk, and all of a sudden it's okay to do this, and they end up getting caught and they go back. We need to stop this. And the way to stop it is through education. Because educated people make better choices. That's not my opinion. That's actually been studied. That's a fact. So why not educate? Why not find out what they're interested in and help them develop a skill that they can take with them when they leave the prison? And reduce their sentences to the extent that it's appropriate to the crime. And if they've already served past their term, automatically release them and reduce the amount of fees, obviously, that they have to pay back and put them on a pay schedule. If you're not going to rescind the fees, because I think the fees should be rescinded, but not totally, but a large portion of them should. But if you're not going to do that, at least put them on a system that doesn't kill their ability to function and support themselves and their family when they get out. Because in some cases, the state gives them $44 when they leave prison. You can't even call an Uber or a cab for $44 and get to anywhere. I don't know if you can even take public transportation anymore. It's kind of expensive now. I live outside of Seattle, and it's expensive just to take the trolley back and forth through the city. It's amazing. So you give this person, they serve their time, they've got $44 and what? Nothing. And you say, oh, you're a drag on society, nobody's going to hire you, and they don't. And they can't apply for benefits at all, so they can't even get the help that they need. In some cases, they can't get into a shelter because they don't want to take ex-prisoners. They might have to go to a special halfway house. Now, a lot of those halfway houses that are privately funded are actually the best thing for them, because that is a place where they can get counseling and they can get back on their feet. But if they're state run, then it's just basically a housing facility where people do whatever they want, and if they get caught doing what they're doing, then they just go back to prison. So again, we need to think about what kind of society we want to live in. We need to stop complaining about what happened and how it is, and come up with some ingenious ways of fixing this problem. In my opinion, the first place we should start is education, and what they're doing with mandatory minimums, getting rid of them and making the sentencing appropriate to the crime. You know, a lot of the judges, I know that there are a lot of judges that are sadistic, but a lot of the judges didn't want to necessarily do this. They didn't have a choice because of what Reagan and Clinton put into place. So they were not able to perform justice. They had a minimum and they had to adhere to it. So again, the problem is the mandatory minimums. The problem is the way in which we look at people who are going through the system. The problem is also the police department and how they have minimums, tickets they have to write, and arrests they have to make. Remember, your police department is a private company. It's a private security firm hired by your city to perform policing services. That's a fact. Go to your Secretary of State website, look, put in police association and find your police department, and then go to their website and cross-check the address from the Articles of Incorporation on the Secretary of State website to the address on the police department's website, and you'll see that they match. It's because they're a private security firm. And because of that, they have been hired and contracted at a certain pay rate in order to do certain things. And because they are a private security firm, they are not beholden in the idea that we think cops are as public servants. They are a private employee performing a function. And so the problem also lies with them as well. What the city council mandates from these police departments, the city council needs to be revised. Ordinances need to be revised. I mean, there's a laundry list of things that we need to do. And I know that in America, we have like one problem and we think, oh my God, one solution. And we attach that solution and it fixes like a third of it, but you still have 2/3 all screwed up. And you say, oh, it didn't work because it's a cancer that we think that way. Things don't just happen all of a sudden. They gradually evolve into the state in which you see it today. So we have to reverse engineer these things and find where we made all the mistakes and fix them, just like you would going through a website that has been hacked, and you have to go through all of the HTML code in the backside of the website, and you have to literally pick out everything and fix the coding of the website. I know because my husband has done that to my website several times. But just like that, we need to go back in time and fix all of the mistakes that have been made with our prison system, with our criminal justice system, with our policing industry, with prison industry, and go all the way back to where it was started. And when we finally fixed it all on the way there, we'll find out that the biggest problem of where it originated seems to just magically disappear.
Well, I always tell people that the solutions to our problems are an inside job, meaning they're in each and every one of us. And I really think that if everybody just shifts their perspective on things, just a change in perspective of the way that they look at all this stuff, that we could solve all of these problems, including the prison industrial complex. But we're going to run into some opposition because there are people that make a ton of money off of this thing. That's one of the biggest, like, I don't want to say downsides. I don't know the proper term for it to the prison. I can't think. It's one of the ugliest parts of it, I guess you could say, of the prison industrial complex is the amount of money that is made off of these people that are in prison. Because they work for like 25 cents an hour. And these corporations, a lot of people don't realize when you call like customer service at like 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning, and you're happy because you're not speaking to somebody that has a Pakistani accent or an Indian accent. Yeah. The reason why you're speaking to somebody who's American more than likely isn't because they have a call center. It's because they have the call center built in a prison. And a lot of these people are prisoners that have headsets on. And they're doing your customer service stuff. A lot of times when you're running credit cards, you're dealing with these people. And I'm not saying that they're going to steal your stuff. What I'm trying to point out is it's like legalized slavery. These people are in a cage, for lack of a better term, because that's what it is. Let's just break it down to what the basics of prison. in jail, right? The basics of prison jail is that these people are in a cage. And now they're caged, and you say, "Hey, look, we feed you, we give you we clothe you, we even allow you to shower. Once in a while, we give you a little bit of safety, not much, but maybe a little bit, maybe the illusion of it. So we want you to work for us. We'll give you 25 cents a day." And then that private prison is charging like $20 an hour per person to whatever corporation that they're doing this work for. It's absolutely abhorrent. So like that's a huge hurdle we need to get over. We can, but people need to get over this whole perception, like you said, of, oh well, they need to go to jail because they're bad. They need to be locked in a cage, Suzanne. They did something really horrific. They were smoking that reefer. Oh, they were bad. They ate some mushrooms once. They have to go to jail. I mean, it's just stupid. It really is. If we change our perception of, let's lock each other up in cages, how about we try to figure out why that person did it and try to correct that behavior? Because that would actually be solving the problem. And that not only would you be affecting change in that person's life, but then that person can go affect change out into the universe. So you actually just change the universe, not just one person. The domino effect from that alone is amazing, and I know you understand that. And it's why this has been an epic conversation about this. I know I kind of sidetracked us into the whole, the minutia a little bit of the prison industrial complex, but it's important because I don't think the listeners understand that. Like, these people they have, look, a lot of them are in jail for BS reasons, and it's not set up to help them. It's really to sum it up, it's that simple. And then they get charged for things when they're in there if you call them or they have to call you. And I understand there's a monetary cost to everything, but they make a ton of money off of a phone call. And the phone call maybe is like you said, 10, 15 minutes, and then it just hangs up. And if you send them an email, it's like a paragraph. And then that counts as like a stamp, and you got to pay a certain amount of money per stamp to send an email. I mean, it's disgusting. It really is. It's broken up so that they can make a ton of money. And it's not set up to help them at all. So,
yeah, and that's the unfortunate part. We have a failing society, partially because of the way we perceive each other, the stupid stereotypes, the 2,000, 5,000-year-old security blankets that we've carried on century by century. And these ideas fail us. They destroy us. They are neurological cancers, but yet we still cling to them because that's the way it's always been. Well, the way it's always been has gotten us here. And do you like where you are? No? Well, then the way that everything has always been maybe wasn't the best way it should have been or it could have been. And the best thing about the way it always used to be is that that's in the past. And if you want to change things, you can change things right now. I mean, literally, you can make a conscious decision not to do something that you shouldn't do, but you do it anyway because you get hyped up on some cortisol and some adrenaline and you just can't help yourself. But if you just take a step back and think about how what you're doing is going to affect the people around you and the consequences of that action, you can consciously choose whether or not you want to do that. And we all have that decision and that capability all day, every day, as long as we're conscious. While we're sleeping, I don't know if we could be, held accountable, but maybe we could. But the point is, if we're not going to progressively change the way that things used to be, then we're going to end up here always. No matter what we do, we're going to end up swirling back to the same place. And that's the definition of insanity. So we need to change the way we think. Obviously, people of color are no different than anybody else. That's a bad idea. It should go away. Obviously, people who accept welfare are not necessarily dregs of society. So we should get rid of that idea. That should go away. If someone does something egregious, yes, they should be punished. But if it's something that really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, and you still want to punish them, fine. Give them a little bit of punishment to make sure they don't do it again, but then let them go. And make them better than they were before they got to you. Because that ensures that you don't ever have to meet them under those circumstances again. And that just makes our society better. It just helps everything along. It makes everybody happier. It makes every interaction nicer. And it means that we are able to tackle things that are egregious in our society, like mass shootings, with a clearer head and less emotional reaction to it, like what we're seeing now.
Agreed. And I actually I'm actually impressed with the people in the town of this last mass shooting, how and even the one in Charleston, the way the family handled themselves, and that they said, they were just like, the one lady was crying her eyes out, and she's like, "May God forgive you," and I forget what else she said, but it was very powerful that you saw, instead of hate and instead of putting out and keeping the cycle going of coming out and being angry in the news, and then the news using that soundbite to keep pushing this divide and causing more problems, you saw just the opposite. And then again, now you see it happening again. So you can see that people, all it takes is a slight shift in people's perspective, and things can be drastically different. It doesn't always have to go the way that they steer it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think that the millennials get it. One of the things about growing up with social media is that you don't necessarily see the people that you're talking to. So what they look like, what the color of their skin is, or how they're dressed, or what religion they adhere to doesn't necessarily come into play, because it's just a conversation. If the conversation steers toward that, sure. And if they're honest with their pictures, then sure. But we have a limited amount of information about the physicality of people, and we have more information about their neurological capability, how smart they are, what their opinions are, what their experiences are, how articulate they can be. And I messed that up, so obviously I'm not that articulate. And the millennials have been able to deal with people on another level that generations before them have not, because we always went outside to play with people. Well, now my son plays with his friends on Minecraft. And he has a great time with them, and they're all in their respective houses playing, and they're having a good time spending time together. It's a little bit weird to me, but he's getting social interaction and he's having a good time. The same thing I did riding my bike with my friends in the neighborhood. So the millennials have this this kind of natural block where they don't care necessarily what you look like or what you adhere to. Who are you? How can you contribute to society? What are your strengths and weaknesses? And that's a good perspective to have. It's a perspective that generation has been able to grasp onto and live to its fullest. That I'm hoping that it will be something that triggers a change, that the next generation after them, the Homeland generation, when they come up into their 20s, that they look at it in a more extreme way. And that idea becomes more and more extreme to the extent that maybe in a couple of generations, we really don't care what the color of your skin is, or what religion you adhere to, or what your ideology is, or who you choose to go to bed with, but simply, who are you? Are you able to produce something that is conducive to peace in our society? What are your strengths and weaknesses? And how can I help you?
Wow. Well said, Suzanne. Well said. I'm going to cut us off because the break is sneaking up. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. 3 short minutes. The first hour just flew right by. I just watched it go by like a Saturn V rocket. Wow. Holy crap. Stay tuned. See why I say she's awesome? That brain is going at like 150 miles an hour. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. We will be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to our number 2 here on tonight's live edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. I'm your host, Popeye, from FederalJack.com, PopeyeRadio.com, and, of course, my YouTube archive channel, DTRH Radio Archives. That's Delta Tango Romeo Hotel Radio Archives. Anyway, hanging out with my epic guest tonight, Susanne Posel from OccupyCorporatism.com. Go check her website out. Check her out on Facebook. Check her out on Twitter. Go check out the archives of her radio show. You'll like her sarcastic wit. First of all, if you don't like her already just from listening to her chat with me for the past hour, then I don't know what to tell you. But you can tell she's smart, she's witty, and as I said, I appreciate your writing style, Suzanne, because the way you write things, the way you author your articles, it's not your opinion. I mean, you're not a robot. You have an opinion. It's not like you don't have one, but you manage to actually keep that out of your journalistic pieces, which that's a rarity nowadays. Most things are just opinion pieces put out there as quote-unquote articles. So thank you for the way you write. It is appreciated, and I know there's a lot of people out there that do appreciate it. So big thank you for that. In fact, I want to get into one of your articles that's on Occupy Corporatism, which is about what we've been talking about, the prison industrial complex, police brutality, which is where we're going to kind of shift gears and go into now. And it's aptly titled, "Why is it so difficult to know how many citizens police actually kill?" So why is it so difficult to know how many citizens police actually kill? I mean, why are the numbers hidden? Because the numbers are staggering? Could that be it?
Well, because there's lots of loopholes. First of all, we don't have a federal database, so we don't have a one-stop shop where the officers and the departments have to go and submit the information to. Another problem is that they don't necessarily have to admit to everything that is done if there is someone who is injured or killed. So they don't necessarily count everything. The departments individually don't count everything. And so it's hard to know how many are actually killed. And because we don't have a lot of lawsuits, we don't have a lot of indictments, we don't have secondary sources where we would be able to deduce through statistical data that, X amount of people are actually killed in Chicago as opposed to what we're able to guesstimate with the little bit of information that we have now. This obviously needs to change because if you go to Cop Block or you go to Film the Police, I'm friends with both organizations, and it's amazing to me how many videos we have. Just the ones that make the news and make the rounds. But if you just search how many police brutality videos on YouTube, you'll see obviously the ones that come up are the most popular. But if you keep going, like on page 7 or 9, you'll see stuff that you didn't know was out there. And it's just as egregious as the stuff that made the news. So there's nothing special about what's happening today other than the fact that we are able to capture it. Loretta Lynch, who is the Attorney General, recently came out and said that we don't necessarily need to have a system where we force law enforcement to report all fatal shootings of citizens. That is disgusting to me as the top attorney for the entire country to say that, because obviously there's a problem with the policing system, the choices that they make, and the loopholes that they're allowed to pass through with arbitration, with grand juries, with prosecutors who don't want to prosecute a member of the police department because they work with them. Maybe they hang out with them personally. All of these people get, the same guy signs their paycheck, so they're all in cahoots with each other. They won't necessarily put someone on the stand or make a spectacle of someone if they don't have to. And so that's where we come in. More protests. Go to your city council and demand that your attorney general or that at least the city attorney prosecute people, especially if they are police officers that deserve to be prosecuted. As long as we buy into, I'm kind of going off topic here maybe a little bit, but there's this rumor going around in right-wing, Bill O'Reilly, some alternative media outlets, that Black Lives Matter is a hate group and they need to be abolished, and that all lives matter. Well, yeah, duh, all lives matter. But the reason why Black Lives Matter has to exist is because there's a large majority of the population here in the United States who don't think that their lives matter. So they have to reiterate it. They have to make a point of it because all lives do matter, including Black lives, including Latino lives. Every life matters. But because some of us don't agree with that, some minorities have to point it out to us. The Counted, which is a Guardian website that counts the amount dead from police officers, the last time I went to their website, it was over 880, and now it's 891. 891 citizens have died because of the police since 2015, okay? Now, just over 100 officers have died in the line of duty. That's a large difference between 125 and 891. So, and a lot of them, shockingly, are not with a weapon like a gun, but struck by the vehicle, struck by the patrol car. There's so many struck by vehicle or struck by the patrol car when you go onto this website, The Counted, that it boggles my mind. Imagine how horrible that must be to die. I mean, you get shot, obviously that's terrible. And depending on where you got shot, you might end up bleeding to death. That's absolutely horrible. But imagine getting hit by the patrol car. The cops are using their vehicles instead of the guns and instead of the tasers and whatever else they have, maybe their fist. this has to stop on a level that is beyond even talking about. It should not even be a point of conversation. This should have ended a long time ago. The fact that we're talking about this means it's politicized. It was politicized a long time before even Obama came out after the last shooting and said that we need to make this a political issue. The only reason why we have to is because that's the only way everybody will listen. This has to stop. The police brutality has to stop. The mass shootings have to stop. The gun laws are egregious and they need to be amended. And we need to understand that the bad apples in our police departments and in our society have been able to gain a foothold because of loose laws and loose regulations. And if we want what's happening today to continue, then we need to just shut up and stop complaining about it, because it's already set up for it to continue and for it to get worse. But if we want it to stop, then we have to look at it honestly and see where the problems are. Find out why it's legal for a person who has a violent criminal background or a history of mental illness to purchase a gun. Just find out why that's possible. Who made that possible? Like in Louisiana with Governor Bobby Jindal, why did he loosen the gun laws so much in about a year before the shooting at the theater in Lafayette? That might not have happened if the gun laws hadn't been loosened. There's a lot of problems that we have here, and there's a lot of money involved too. The NRA is huge, and they spend millions of dollars every year making sure that your representatives in the House and the Senate do exactly what they say when it comes to gun laws. And they've done a number on the perspective of how we view the Second Amendment, which is absolutely shocking to me what they've been able to do in about 50 years. But this is the result. This is the consequence of all of those actions. So here you go, folks. If you like it, fine. But I don't. And I'm not alone. And because of that, I think, and the growing number of people who are actually absolutely sick of having these conversations every couple of months, we need to just stop having the conversations and start making changes.
Unfortunately, gun laws won't stop anything, because it's not going to stop anybody that really wants to do something bad. Will figure out a way. Part of the one of the largest parts of this problem is the perspective that we look at each other right now. We've been so desensitized by all the violence and people are going to get pissed when I say this, because they always say, "Oh, you're blaming video games and TV." No, but largely in part, video games and TV over the past, I'd say 10, 15 years, especially the past 10 years, have really gotten much more violent and much more gory, and it helps desensitize things. And then there's the whole, we've been at war since 2001, so it's 14 and a half years. That desensitizes an entire nation, because these kids are growing up, this younger generation is growing up where everything they know is violence, terrorism, bad guys, people could be killed. You need guns. There needs to be fear. You need to have body armor. Everybody's scared of everything. And they're growing up in a drastically different environment than we were, too. And then there's a lot of stuff at play. Then there's things like that they know, the whole copycat thing. They know that if they publicize things to a certain extent, that you're going to have people that are going to go ahead and act on it. Like this last guy wrote, if people are to believe the official story, I'm not saying that it's not true or anything. I'm just saying, if you want to believe, just let's say the official story is completely accurate, right? According to the official story, he says, I was able, it's easier now for someone to make a name, and I'm paraphrasing, but it's easy for someone to make a name by just shedding blood, by killing somebody. So what do they learn from the TV putting the same images on over and over and over again and talking about it and making that the main story, and all the politicians are fighting over it no matter which side it's on? They realize that they're going to get on TV. So, and unfortunately, there are crazy people out there that no matter what you do, and I know in Florida, it's not that easy to get a firearm. People think it is, but it's not. And a lot of the quote unquote gun show loopholes and stuff, every time I've ever purchased a firearm at a gun show, I had to do a background check. And I actually have a concealed weapons permit. And I've had to do a background check every time. The only way that doesn't work is if you buy it from some private citizen. But that's not going to, People that are honestly going to do something crazy like that usually don't go to a gun show and look for some old man selling his rifle. They either steal their parents, or sometimes they actually do buy it themselves. And they, in some cases, they don't show anything, and in some cases, they do have there is a background. Depending on what state it's in, like you said, some people, maybe they loosen laws. Kind of makes you wonder if they loosen the laws on purpose, so chaos will ensue, so that then they can turn around and go, you see, we need more police, we need more, because you need to have chaos too in order to be able to run around and justify the whole security industrial complex, which has grown up since 9/11. I don't know if you've ever seen these trade shows where they have all this up armored cars and, response equipment, and it's ridiculous. It's like anti-terrorism crap, and they market it to the local PDs and stuff for, the war on drugs, which is a whole nother farce we could get into. We could do a whole 2-hour show on that in and of itself. But just changing the gun laws, unfortunately, won't do anything. First, we have to change our perspective and how we look at each other. We have to stop like, oh, well, human life isn't worth anything. I can just shoot this person because I'm upset. Like, we need to change the way we actually think about one another. This goes back to what we were talking about in the first hour. Like, we need to start to look at each other drastically different. Part of the problem is that they're, whatever you want to call them, the people that are part of these elitist groups, they've gotten the general public, and this is my viewpoint, and I'll let you pontificate on this. I want to get your thought on this. But they've gotten us to look at each other the way they look at us. So we look at ourselves and look at each other, not people that are, starting to consciously wake up. I don't mean just like, oh my God, there's a problem. I mean like the level that we're talking on, this deeper level, this deeper human level, that they're waking up. But the general public, the powers that shouldn't be, they've really done a good job at convincing us that to think about ourselves and each other the way that they look at us, like we're vermin and that we're lower. And I think if everybody just picked their perspective up and shifted it 3 foot to the left or to the right, however, and looked at things from a little bit of a different angle and looked at each other a little bit differently with a little bit more love and humanity, a lot of this crap would stop. And because, I mean, in a perfect world, we could make a law and it would stop the bad things from happening, but it won't. And the NRA, I'm in total agreement. That Wayne LaPierre is a douchebag. That guy is part of the problem. The NRA is controlled opposition, and as far as I'm concerned, so is Gun Owners of America. And I know people are going to be so pissed that I said that, but both organizations have some, we'll just say, interesting ties, to say the least. So I don't really trust either organization. And
I can explain who they're tied to.
Oh, go ahead. We have like 10 minutes. Feel free.
They're tied to the Council for National Policy. Now, the Council for National Policy was started in the 80s, just after Reagan took office. They began in April of 1981. They are headed by the guy who wrote the Left Behind series, Tim LaHaye. James Dobson is a member. Jerome Corsi is a member. The late Stanley Monteith. Paul Craig Roberts is a member. Oath Keepers, Stuart Rhodes is hooked up with Larry Pratt, who is a member. And the funny thing is, Larry Pratt put out a book called Armed People Victorious, calling for a Christian militia of God-fearing veterans to fight God's army, or to be God's army. And that same year, Stuart Rhodes incorporated Oath Keepers in Las Vegas. That's 2009. Is that a coincidence? I don't know, because they're both friends. I don't understand. But anyway, the Council for National Policy's job is to create a theocracy here in this country. That's why Kim Davis is a mascot. That's why Fox News exists. That's why there's a war on Christmas. That's why we have Ted Cruz talking about replacing all of our Supreme Court justices with conservative Christians so that they'll vote biblical values. We have this massive movement in evangelical taking over alternative media, supporting white supremacy, supporting racism, supporting big business and Koch brothers and climate denying science. Even Lord Monckton is hooked up with this. It's a huge, gigantic monster, and it's been, since the 1980s. What is that, like almost 30-something years strong? And the problem with this is now we're seeing the fruition of this. Wayne LaPierre is a member of the Council for National Policy. Their purpose is to, like I said, turn this country into a theocracy where we are ruled under Sharia, but it's just replace Sharia with Christian. And to me, this is the most egregious affront to our constitutional republic that I've ever seen in my entire life. And I speak about it often, as much as I possibly can. 3 or 4 of our presidential candidates are cooked up with the Council for National Policy, including Rand Paul. Ron Paul is not directly attached to them, but all of his friends seem to be direct members, so he likes to hang out with those people. And the list goes on and on. And the most disgusting thing about it is a lot of their members, like Phyllis Schlafly, who shows up on commercial breaks on RBN. She's a member of the Council for National Policy. She heads the Eagle Forum, which is the female spinoff of the Council for National Policy. And her little spiel is played during the commercial break on RBN. So it's everywhere. It's all over the place. We just don't realize who's writing the script. We don't realize who told us the plot lines and the storylines. But once you look at the Council for National Policy, and their website is up, you can go to their website and take a look and see in their members. The head of the founder of the Tea Party, in fact, both founders of the Tea Party, Elizabeth, and I can't remember her last name, and Mark Meckler, who ended up infiltrating, along with Pete Santilli, the Truckers' Ride for the Constitution. It was originally Truckers to Shut Down America. They infiltrated that with General Lee, was one of the men sent to indoctrinate people into this Article 5, 10th Amendment Center. Let's, change the entire Constitution because all the amendments written after a certain amendment, 10th Amendment, is null and void, and it's unconstitutional. It shouldn't be there anyway, which includes the right for Black people to be free and not slaves. But anyway, these people want everything to be biblical values. They want everyone to have a right as long as it's a right given by you in the Bible. That's why they hate Planned Parenthood. That's why they hate the LGBT community. That's why Kim Davis is allowed to grow to the status that she's grown, because this ideology is permeating, coming from the 14 states that seceded from the Union and spilling out into northern states. And it's like a cancer. It's destructive. It's corrosive to our Constitution, and that's where a lot of these gun arguments come from.
Well, a lot of the times, and people don't know this, a lot of the times that they throw it out there that, if there were less guns in the street, there wouldn't be so many shootings. And look, I agree that there is a ton of firearms out in the populace of the United States. But even if you took the guns away, just like shown in Australia, they kill each other using other methods. Like, gun crime went down, but like strangulation, rape, getting your head bashed in with a hammer, suffocation by plastic bag, other things went up. Seriously. So people, like, we need to look at it, at least in my eyes, I look at it, we need to look at it, whereas laws I don't think are going to change anything. It doesn't matter. We have to look at it from a more enlightened point of view. I don't think any of these idiots in Washington passing a law is going to change a damn thing. I think we as individuals need to if we want to actually change, like I have Be the Change tattooed on the side of my neck, if we actually want to be the change, we actually have to start looking at each other in a different light. We have to, we can't wait for somebody to do it. We have to start doing it. And maybe we won't need to, eventually down the road, we won't feel we need as many weapons to protect ourselves from each other because we won't be living in that fear. But the country, especially since 9/11, we went from being like the party country, right? Everybody was chill, partying, blah, 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 blah. We went from being all chilled and partying to on a war footing. Oh my God, we're under attack. And now everything we're scared of. And they use that fear to manipulate. I find it interesting when I ask this question. I know we only got a few minutes left here before the break comes up. We can get into this on the other side too, but I find it interesting that you got to wonder, didn't, what was it, Soros? Who was the one that bought up a bunch of the gun companies like a couple years ago? And then, like right after they bought up the gun companies, you see a lot of scare tactics of Obama's going to take guns, and I don't look. I know that that there are plans that they would love to do that and everything. I get it, but feasibly, there's just way too many guns out there for they'd have to do it incrementally. Even if he passed some sort of executive order, it wouldn't work that well. So, I just find that it's interesting that right after, and I can't remember who it was. It was either Soros or the other one that bought up a controlling share of or most of a lot of the companies that actually make firearms. And then after he buys up all the companies, all of a sudden, oh my God, the guns are going to get taken away. Obama's going to pass this gun law. And then there'd be this surge of people going and buying guns. And you'd see record numbers of guns and, ammo being sold and all this. And I'm like, man, who's making all the money off of that? So you got to wonder, on the back end, if some of that panic and some of that stuff is put out there through different organizations to create this chaos so that you can sell and more weapons to the general public. But I don't think that I don't think making stricter laws, because the stuff that they actually propose won't work. It won't do anything. It won't stop crime. You're not going to stop bad guys from getting guns. If bad guys want to get guns, they'll get guns. If they can't get a gun, they'll use a rock or a bat or a knife or something else. They'll do what they want to do. Bad guys are going to do, bad people with bad intentions, I should say, because it's not as simple as bad versus good. People with bad intentions will do whatever they want to do to carry out said bad intentions if they're actually going to go through with it. I think it's a change of perspective. But the break is sneaking up on us in about a minute and a half.
Yeah, I'll answer some of the things you talked about on the other side. But I just quickly looked up. Soros doesn't actually own anything. You were talking about Cerberus Capital Management, who is a private equity firm owning a lot of these gun manufacturers and ammunition manufacturers. Soros doesn't actually have... Or I'm sorry, his management, his capital management, Cerberus, doesn't have any equity in any of the gun manufacturers at all. So I would be interested to find out, anything contrary to that. But most of these gun manufacturers are privately owned companies. Smith & Wesson has been around since, God knows how long. I think the OK Corral, they were shooting themselves up with Smith & Wesson. And these companies have made tons of billions of dollars over a couple of hundred years just making guns and making them available. And they have the NRA, who spends millions of dollars in lobby. Over 50% of their budget actually goes directly to advertising for the gun manufacturers in their publications and other places that they go to, all their events. And the rest of the money goes to pay for lobbyists to put money into the pockets of congressmen and House representatives.
Suzanne, hold that thought right there, because the break's going to cut us off. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. 3 short minutes. Don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. Final segment. So when we went to break, Suzanne and I were discussing gun control, guns, gun laws, perspective changing, and she only had about a minute and 20 seconds to respond to what I was saying, and then the break snuck up on us. So I wanted to let her finish, and we were chatting during the break, and it was actually really good. So Suzanne, you can take as much time as you want.
Okay.
And go back over what you had said to me during the break. Go ahead.
Well, obviously, we need to change our perspective. This is a perspective that has been going on for a long time. It goes, at least in this country, goes all the way back to the 1500s, when the corporations decided that they wanted to replace the indentured servants with African slaves. And we've had this problem with looking at people as if they are lower class than you, going all the way back to that point. And it's really hard to change the perspective of 325 million people. So instead of choosing the hardest thing, what did they tell you on your SATs? Answer the easiest questions first and then tackle the hard ones. So let's answer the easiest question first. Now, in South Carolina, there is a law that has a loophole in it that accounts for nearly 60,000 guns getting into the hands of known violent criminals and the mentally ill. The recent mass shooting, he obtained 14 guns legally through firearms dealers. And I can go over many other people who have obtained guns legally, and the problem is the gun laws that we have today, which were written by NRA people, lobby groups who went in and gave our congressmen and our senators lots of money to make sure that the laws are so ineffective that, hey, why we don't need to change the gun laws. Of course not. No, the gun laws, that's not going to stop anybody. Like you were saying, I'm not trying to make fun of it, but Dylan Roof was a white supremacist, or is a white supremacist. He would have killed them with whatever he had. You're absolutely right. The fact that he was easily able to obtain a gun made it a hell of a lot easier. And that's the problem. The gun laws that we have now were written by people who profit off of their loosely written loopholes and abilities to make sure that anyone can obtain a gun. Now, you mentioned the gun show. And gun show is a little bit of a misnomer because there are no statistics on how many guns are sold under the table, and a lot of them are at these gun shows. I know that individual experiences are real, but they don't account for the totality when you look at what's going on in gun shows. And the little bit of information that we've been able to glean is that 90% of guns that go up missing are given away or sold at not given away, but sold at gun shows without any type of check on who this person was, even showing a state ID or a driver's license. And so a lot of the laws that we have don't cover some of the guns that are used to kill people, like shotguns and rifles. And so it's not just the assault weapons that are on the list of guns that congressmen and senators want to take away or restrict rights to, not take away, restrict rights to. But it's the easy obtainable guns, the revolvers and the shotguns and the hunting rifles that account for over 85% of people who are killed with gun-related violence. You're more likely to kill a family member or yourself than you are in a home where there's a gun than you are without. And so some of the statistics that are fed to us are not necessarily accurate, or they have a misnomer like the statistics with the gun show. And what we need to do is tighten some of these gun laws and make them restrictive so that people who have criminal, violent backgrounds are not able to obtain guns. I mean, why would you want someone who is known to commit violent acts to have access to a gun? I mean, that just makes sense. Because what we're arguing here, and what the right and the alternative and even Fox News are arguing, is mentally ill. Well, right now there are tons of loopholes that allow mentally ill to obtain a gun. So are we saying that if we put a restriction against a mentally ill person, making it difficult or impossible for them to obtain a gun, that somehow infringes on everyone's Second Amendment rights? Well, what they're saying is, I'm mentally ill and I like my Second Amendment and I want to be able to obtain a gun. Well, I'm guessing that you're not saying that you're mentally ill, but by default, you are saying that you're mentally ill. So here's the issue. We both know that you're not mentally ill, but someone who is should not be able to obtain a gun that would afford them a mass shooting. So maybe that's a good idea. It's not an infringement on your Second Amendment right because you're not mentally ill. You could obtain the gun. And what's wrong with waiting a couple of hours or even a couple of days before obtaining a gun? You're still going to get it because you're not mentally ill. You don't have a criminal background, so you're assured that you're going to get it. You just have to wait a couple of days. Well, why do you need that gun right this second? Well, I'm sure you have 20 of them in your basement.
In most states, I know, like here in Florida, you can't purchase a weapon like that. In fact, the only way you can walk out same day with a firearm is if you have a concealed weapons permit, and they still do an ATF background check on you. Right then and there, the dealership calls in the ATF, because I've seen it. My friend owns a gun shop, and I've literally seen it, where even on police officers in their uniform. In fact, the law is so strict that a cop in their uniform, unless they have a concealed weapons permit, can't just walk in and be like, well, I'm a cop, here's my police ID, I'm obviously in my uniform, I want to buy this gun and walk out with it. Even they can't do it. The laws are pretty strict, and in many cases, some of the problems with gun violence, like Chicago, if they actually just enforce the laws that are already on the books, in many cases there wouldn't be a problem. In some cases, in fact, many cases, I think a lot of this is done on purpose because, again, out of chaos comes their order, right? So I don't
Right, but
I don't think that.
I just want to interrupt just for a second,
Go ahead.
because what the other side's consequence looks like has not made it to a lot of alternative media audiences, unfortunately. Just a couple of days ago, a 48-year-old woman who happened to be sitting in a parking lot watching a loss prevention officer chasing two alleged shoplifters pulled out her 9mm semi-automatic gun and started shooting at them in the middle of a crowded parking lot. Okay? Now, on the 29th of last month, there was a gentleman who was a concealed carry permit, and he saw what appeared to be a carjacking. And so he shot at the assailants, shooting one of them in the head. And this happened in Texas. He didn't stick around like the 48-year-old woman to wait for the police and give her statement. He picked up his shell casings and took off. And that gentleman he shot in the head is in stable condition and he's going to live. But this is what it looks like on the other side. That's the consequence.
Oh,
When
I
you
know.
constantly tell people that they have to get their gun, like some of these lieutenant governors telling Christians, oh my God, go out and get your gun because they're killing off Christians. Now all of a sudden you have people who are pulling out their guns in times where it's totally inappropriate. They're not being threatened at all. They want to be Dirty Harry. They want to be Jason Bourne. So all of a sudden they're vigilantes. They're going out with their semi-automatic guns and shooting people in the head. In one instance, a couple of years ago, a gentleman tried to prevent a carjacking by shooting one man dead and injuring 5 others. And he was not charged. The police said that the murder of the assailant was justified because of the carjacking. So we have a serious problem. We have people who are armed, law-abiding citizens who, for some reason or another, are starting to think that it's okay to pull out their gun and start shooting into crowded parking lots at people at gas stations. I mean, what if one of the bullets had hit the pump? Come on, think about this. That these are law-abiding,
Oh no,
card-carrying
agree.
members of the NRA.
But you can't classify. That's like George Zimmerman. I personally think that he's an asshole. Okay, that guy makes any legal, smart, intelligent, which are many, if not most, of the gun owners out there aren't like that. Okay, most people would be quite surprised that, like, I know somebody that was quite surprised to learn that more than 50% of the population of the state of Florida has concealed weapons permits. So if you're in a store, half the people in there, chances are, have a concealed weapon on them. Most people aren't going to freak out or snap. Now, I totally agree. There are some cases where there are idiots, where they think they're John J. Rambo, and they run out there and they think they're stopping crime, but it's not the gun that does that to the person. Like, blaming the inanimate object isn't the answer. It's again, the programming they see on television. If they're a loss prevention officer, they probably think that they're undercover cops. There might be a private investigator. A lot of PIs. I used to be a PI. A lot of PIs think they're, special detectives. You'd be surprised. The point is, I agree. There are idiots out there that are the exact case. Like, hey, look, this guy obviously shouldn't be allowed to, have his firearm. Now that they've acted out, whoever it was, they should be held accountable for their actions, no doubt. But the gun didn't do it. I mean, they did it with the gun. The gun is just a tool. It's like, I look at a gun like a hammer. You can build a house with a hammer, or you can cave someone's skull in with it. It's really what you do with said tool. You know what I mean? I know that, I totally, I hear your point. Agree to disagree, respectfully. But and by the way, people need to realize that we don't have to agree on every single topic. That's how you can have a conversation about something. It would be kind of boring if Susanne came on and she had the exact same viewpoints on everything, and I didn't get an actual chance to have a debate with someone on my show. It's nice to actually have a debate with someone who's not yelling and screaming, and we can go back and forth and no one's getting their feelings hurt. So I actually enjoy this. So I like I said, I appreciate the fact that, we can agree to disagree. You know what? No harm, no foul. Perhaps the answer lies somewhere in the middle. Again, if we wouldn't need, it would be cool if we weren't living in the fear vibe and we didn't feel that we needed to carry a gun out in public and be worried that some schmuck might pull something and might, do something. I mean, even I've thought lately when I go out in public, like, I wonder if some idiot's going to do something stupid in here for whatever reason. But there's more mitigating factors than, like I see, than just the gun. And I would love to sit and debate, for hours. We could, you and I could obviously go back and forth, and it would be a really good debate. But we only have like 15 minutes, and I know I wanted to go over that 72-hour collapse article with you that you wrote. And I just looked at the time here, and we're running out of time. So if you don't mind shifting gears a wee bit, I want to
Absolutely
shift gears onto that article. And by the way, very good debate. I appreciate the lack of emotion and just being able to chat with you back and forth. And even if we don't agree, whatever, that's cool. I appreciate it. It's nice to be able to actually have a debate on my show. So that
yeah, you should be able to voice your opinion. I don't agree, or I do agree, but it's not my place to judge.
Well, see, but that's how, I mean, educated conversation, we don't always have to agree on things, but at least we can look at each other's different viewpoint and try to, even if we don't agree with it, at least kind of understand where the other side is coming from, and then try to figure out how to come to some sort of agreement or come to some sort of solution for, whatever the problem is. So, okay, that being said, we have about 13 minutes. So you did an article about 72 hours before economic collapse. And when you, as I said to you, when people that I know that knew you were coming on, they kept bringing this article up to me and saying, "Please talk to her about this article. It was really powerful. It was a really good article." So I'm going to give you the floor and let you, start from wherever you want with it and explain the whole thing. Explain what it was about, and because you hear economic collapse, this constantly coming from different points in the media. So I'd like to, I want to get your take on it, because I read the article and it was good, but go ahead.
Okay, my take on the total economic collapse. Weren't we supposed to have an economic collapse by the end of September? Yeah, that never happened. Anyway, that guy's trends don't really actually follow through if you look in history. But anyway, what the banks have been able to do, and I don't understand this, is when you have a computer, you have a firewall, you have maybe you use Kaspersky or Adobe, or not Adobe. I can't think of another one, but you make sure that nobody's coming into your computer and hacking. And if somebody is, you clear it out, you defrag, you do all that stuff. Banks don't do that. They haven't invested any of the infrastructure they need, considering what their servers contain, to stave off hackers. And so they get hacked all the time, and it's really not that difficult to hack into them. But at the same time, they're simultaneously calling for a cybersecurity bill where the American Bankers Association is getting in bed with the U.S. Treasury and trying to write this bill so that the provisions are voluntary and so they can adhere to it at their own whim. And if they don't adhere to it but they are attacked, they still get the benefits of it. Sounds a lot like the labeling law that Monsanto and the biotech industry are trying to write and force the FDA to approve. And at the same time, they are honestly getting hacked into. There have been many viruses. The virus that I was talking about on that interview, and it was an interview in 2012 with SGT Report, and people still bring that to me as well. And I've written tons of articles explaining details, more than I can go into now, on OccupyCorporatism.com. There are banking viruses out there now that can mimic all of your movements and hack into, give you a fake screen, and you think that you're logging into your bank account when you're really, they have DNS tunneled in, and they are just siphoning out information. And what DNS tunneling is a way for hackers to get into, think about, the server would be your right hand, and your computer, your laptop, would be your left hand. And in between, there's a line or a cable. Actually, there's actually a cable going through in between. Well, what DNS tunneling is the hackers get into the cable in between. So when the server sends the information that you queried from your computer back to you through that cable, it's absolutely normal. There's nothing wrong with the signal, except the signal was infiltrated in the center. And when you respond to the query, all of the information that you're sending back to the server in response is siphoned out at the same time. It's very difficult to find out whether or not you've been DNS tunneled, but know for a fact that you are, because a 16-year-old on YouTube explained it to me, and he was showing me from his high school library how to DNS tunnel. So a 16-year-old can do it. I'm pretty sure that any hacker, and most of them don't live in their parents' basements, contrary to urban legend. And what these banking viruses are able to do is log into your bank account and use it as if you were using it. And so you would get all of these bills and you would find out it's beyond identity theft. It's literally taking your private data, and the banks don't really know that it's happening. Nobody knows that it's happening. It's in between the signals, and it's very difficult to get into. So with that problem, you have banks calling for cybersecurity bill, and they're threatening that if the cybersecurity bill doesn't come through, that we're going to have a complete shutdown and they won't be able to handle it. And so they might have to shut down the banks. And people will get hacked into and their money will disappear because it's numbers on a computer screen and there's nothing they can do about it. Well, the banking virus that I was talking about in that interview is the gauze virus, and it does exist. And what it's able to do is, like I was explaining, using DNS tunneling, siphoning out your information, using your information as if you were you all over the internet, and there's nothing you can do about it until you find out about it. And if the banks wanted to shut down for a holiday, well, they could just use the guys that they're trying to clean out their system and defrag all of their computers and whatnot, and they would need maybe Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and everything would be fine on Monday. Well, what that might actually end up being is kind of like what we saw on the stock exchange when you had high-frequency trading and multiple hedge funds using different algorithms at the same time simultaneously, causing a crash of the New York Stock Exchange servers, which ended up, they were down most of the day. If you had a group of hackers who wanted to DNS tunnel simultaneously with a DDoS attack on a bank, they could do so with very little effort right now, the way that the banks are secured. Under a cybersecurity bill, the banks would be no more secure than they are now, but they would have the blanket protection in case they got hacked to take taxpayer money to pay for any damages that they incurred. And this gets a little bit complicated. When you put your money into a bank, you get a promissory note, essentially saying that the money will be there when you go to call it in. So that would be like going out to the ATM and punching in your number and taking out money. They promise that the money is going to be there. Well, in 2009, Sentinel Management Group is a brokerage firm that went under. And Bank of New York Mellon sued to be first in line of creditors. Now, when a bank is insolvent, under duress, or in bankruptcy, they can use any funds available to them, including any funds, customer funds. And we saw that with MF Global, and we saw that with Sentinel Management Group, who took customer funds to pay off their debtors. So when Bank of New York Mellon sued and won to be first in line of creditors, what that meant was they were going to get their money back before any of the customers who had their money stolen in order to pay back. And now this brokerage firm who's gone under owes a difference, and the first person who's going to get it is another bank who is their creditor. So whatever's left over, that goes to the customers. If nothing's left over, then the customers get nothing. And that is true, and that is law. And that could be argued in court. That's a point of contention in court. So essentially what that means is if you have money in a bank account or in an IRA or in a savings account or a CD or whatever, your money, or even in a pension fund with your city or state, that money is subject to whatever bank is holding it, and whether they're insolvent, under duress, or in bankruptcy. And if they are, they can siphon out your money and use it. Now, when it comes to the banking virus, if your money just happens to disappear because they don't have the kind of secure cybersecurity that they need in order to even function, let alone any high security, make sure that hackers can't get in, then your money was property of the bank to begin with. And so their responsibility to you is only after everyone else has been held or has gotten their due. And so, like I said, if there's money left over, then you get something. If not, then you're screwed. And so in my opinion, I wouldn't have a bank. And that's just me. I don't have a bank account. I haven't had a bank account in over a decade. And I pay my bills and everything's fine. and I never have to, worry about whether or not somebody is going to steal my money, or my money is not going to be there when I get when I go to take it out. I don't get a promissory note telling me that it'll be there. I know that it's there because I have it.
Yeah, I would rather have my money physically in hand. When you understand how the whole banking system works with most of the money, what is it like? I know it's like some astronomical percentage, like it's probably even higher, but I want to say like at least like 85% of the money that's out there is actually only in digital format. I forget what the exact percentage is, but that's a scary thought that it all exists on computers, and then if they really wanted to, for whatever reason, they just press a button and then bloop. That's how they can take your stuff. It's that simple now. It's not even a matter of going over and like they have to physically remove your cash from some sort of vault that has your name on it. It's just a matter of transferring it from one column to another in a database somewhere. That's it.
And it's been that way for a very long time. The physical representation is simply because we changed those numbers to the fiat currency that we're holding in our hand. And in my opinion, I'd rather have the fiat currency, even if it is devalued, because we're still trading it. I can't put a bar of gold down on my dinner table and have the kids cut into it and eat it. But I can trade that fiat for some good or service to make sure that my family is fed and everything's taken care of. It's ridiculous to me, knowing what I know about the banking system and how it all works, to even play with these banks. And even with the digital currency, like you were bringing up, that the idea of what digital currency could have been in an altruistic sense is not what it's physically represented as. It traded on the stock market as a commodity right now. It is not anonymous. The IRS treats it as if it were property, so you have to pay essentially property taxes on it. It's far from this peer-to-peer anonymous way of paying for things that it was sold as when it was first introduced. It's completely changed since then. And all of the copycats off of Bitcoin, like Dogecoin and all the other coins, they follow the same exact format. So unfortunately, when it comes to cryptocurrency or digital currency, what the current incarnation that we have now is not what we wanted it to be, and therefore I don't think that we should be indulging in it. However, it does represent over 65% of the current currency that is being traded. And lumped into those figures are also like debit cards and other payment services like PayPal and things like that.
We have about a minute
Square.
and a half, and I know somebody wanted me to ask in the chat. Credit unions, are you same thoughts on them as?
Oh no, credit unions are mandated by the government. They have their own FDIC. I think it's NAUC. Don't quote me on that. I think it's NAU or NUA. I think I invert it. They have their insurance from the federal government, and so they get the same treatment as other banks do. They are beholden to the federal government with mandates just like other banks. Credit unions are no different, and they would be no less susceptible to any digital or cyber hacking that would occur at JP Morgan Chase. It's no safer.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Susanne, we are out of time. I have about a minute before the show is over. I just want to say thank you so much for the good conversation and actual debate. It was actually nice to have a debate with a guest and a civil one. I haven't gotten a chance to do that in a while.
Yeah, we still like each other.
Yeah, it's like we're not throwing the beer mugs at each other and breaking the beer bottles in the bar and be like, I'll meet you out in the parking lot.
Nobody hung up on each other. It was great.
Right? Yeah, no, it was a very civil debate, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much, and thank you for we don't always have to agree, ladies and gentlemen, on everything. So this is a perfect example of that. Anyway, Susanne, thank you so much for all your work. Thank you for giving me and the listeners 2 hours tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, occupycorporatism.com. And you don't have to hang up. I'll say goodbye to you off air. Go ahead and shamelessly plug your stuff really quick. We got about 30 seconds.
Okay. Hardline, American Freedom Radio, 8 Central, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Occupycorporatism.com. Hit me up on Twitter. Message me, occupycorporatism@gmail.com, or hit me up on Facebook. And thank you very much for having me. It was fun. I had a great time.
I did as well. Ladies and gentlemen, as I always tell you, the solutions to our problems are an inside job. Go out and be the superheroes I know you all are. I love you all. I believe in you all. And I'll see you all again live on Tuesday. I'm out of here.